Hi everybody, Steve Scott here again with another episode of Bibliophile's Dream in Judo, Sambo, Jiu-Jitsu, martial arts. A little bit more about look at my book collection. Some people have written me and they actually want to see more, so if you're one of those people, keep watching. I think you might like this, and if you're not into books, why, I hope you are someday. They're great things to have. But anyway, we're going to talk about a few more books that I have that are a bit rare, possibly anymore. They certainly weren't rare a number of years ago when they were written. They were very pertinent, and they're still pertinent. But anyway, let's start at it. There is an author named Moshe Feldenkrais. He is European. I think he ended up being French, but he was a leading figure back in the 40s in European judo to some extent. He also became quite famous for his work in physical therapy. I think it's called the Feldenkrais method of physical therapy, and so he's probably better known for that than his judo, certainly. But anyway, he put out several books that I know of anyway. This one here, let me just deal with this one. It's a reprint from 2010 of a 1952 book, I believe, called Higher Judo Groundwork. And I'll tell you what, it was, one of those things that's well before its time. It was written before its time. Well, this is one of those books. Has a lot of great information that guys like me and other people like me have taken to heart and been teaching for a number of years. And I use this book quite a bit. I'd read about him in other places, but when this came out as a reprint, I grabbed it up quite a bit because it did not have this copy in its original form. So I would highly recommend this. It is now published and a forward by Michael Bruce and Dennis Leary and Moti Natif. Okay, I'm sorry if I slaughtered those gentlemen's names. And it is printed by Somatic Resources, Blue Snake Books in Berkeley, California. A great read, really interesting, pragmatic approach to ground fighting. Okay, no matter what the sport, but his background, of course, is in judo in this. Now, his earlier book, which is pretty much a generic basic book, but at the time, there were very few good books written anywhere in judo, and this is from, I believe, also 1952. It was, actually this was published a bit later in England. I have a reprint from 1955. Okay, the first printing was in 1944, the revised edition, and this is an interesting book because Feldenkrais was a devotee, a protege of the great Kawaishi in France, who was one of the leading figures in developing judo in the country of France. And when the war broke out, World War II, Feldenkrais, I believe, ended up going to London to evade the Nazis, to escape from the Nazis. And so he ended up publishing this book in London later on, and he used, like his other book here, he uses line drawings, no photography, but the line drawings are of Kawaishi himself, the great French pioneer of judo. So anyway, you might like this book if you can find it. They're hard to find. It's a keeper. It's basic stuff, really. But again, when it was written, this was the stuff that people were learning judo from. They would open the book and learn the judo right on the mat. And this is, by the way, I've used this quite a bit the same way. So it's a great little book. Anyway, anything by Moshe Feldenkrais is quite good, and I would highly recommend it. Another British author, A.P. Harrington, he was rather prolific with several books. I'm looking on the back here, the back cover, Defend Yourself with Judo, Every Boy's Judo and Every Girl's Judo. I think he's had other books about it. But anyway, it is the Science of Judo. And you can see it's pretty beat up here. But it is the Science of Judo. Okay, I'll hold it up there. And it is a very good first attempt. It was written, I believe, it's published in 1962. And he really did a good job at that time especially, and it still pertains to it, of explaining why judo works, the basic biomechanics of judo a bit. He doesn't get into great detail in terms of the scientific or the biomechanics or kinesiology of it, but he explains it very well in layman's terms of why and how judo works in a variety of basic techniques. The only bad point, I guess, about it is There are just figures of either someone entering a technique or executing a technique. There are no steps in how to do it. Step 1, step 2, step 3 on. It's not done that. It's just a finished thing. Here he's doing a Tsukikomi Jime from a standing position. He just shows it doing it. But it doesn't show how to get it. But he explains how to get into it. He explains how to get into it every time. So it's a good book. Anyway, so there you have the Science of Judo. If you can read that, poor desk cover has been beat up. The jacket's been beat up. But it is a good little book if you can find it. A.P. Harrington is one of those early authors of judo. He's a Brit, and he's one of the reasons I think why British judo is so good now. So that's a good book to have. 2 other great books here. I really recommend them highly. Judo Training Methods, a source book by Takahiko Ishikawa and Don Dreger. Ishikawa Sensei, I think, became a 9th Dan, and he was a great judo man. He was an All-Japan judo champion, and he moved to the United States and settled in Philadelphia. I know my good friend Lou Moyerman is a student of his. Sensei Ishikawa is long past. He has passed away, but he left many great students who still teach judo. And he was a great judo man. And again, combining with Don Dreger, this is a great book, and they're still available out there. They might even be in the paperback form. This is an original one, but it has a lot of photography and a lot of how to train effectively to do judo well. And when this was written, it was state-of-the-art stuff. It's still really good stuff, by the way. Dreger was a big advocate in strength and fitness and conditioning for any sports, especially judo. And he was, a very good technical judoka, but he was also buffed. I mean, the guy was really well built. And a lot of the photos in here of him lifting, him lifting and doing some early lifts. And I love seeing it because I'm kind of an old timer in the way. When I started lifting, we still had round dumbbells, and I still have in my gym some of my old York equipment that I love still to use, by the way. So he's using all that equipment in here. So good book. Another book by Dreger with another co-author, in this case, I think Tadao Otaki. And it is Judo for Young Men. Okay, and it's a great book. I think Judo Training Methods was written in 61 or so, 1961. This came out about 1965, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere about there. But it is a book on, basically, it's just a good book for young men or young women now, certainly, but has a lot of great technique pictures in it, photos in it. It has Inokuma, some of the great early judo players of the time, Geisink, I believe. A lot of good action photography taken from the All Japan Championships and things like that. It shows a lot of methodology on how to train efficiently. It is just a good source book on how to do judo, and I've used it much in my career, and it's one of those go-to books. He shows how to do break falls correctly, how to tie your belt, all the basics. But he gets deep into the weeds too, with a lot of corrective actions in posture and movement and throwing and so on. What I love is a great American judo man, a mentor of mine, a mentor of many people. Jim Bregman is in here when he was a very young man, and he was training at the Kodokan. And of course, he knew Don Dreger quite well. And a lot of great photos of the models for a lot of these techniques are Jim Bregman, which a little close to home because he means so much to a lot of us in American judo. But anyway, a great book, Judo for Young Men. And again, I would say if you can get them together, these should go together. Judo Training Methods and Judo for Young Men. Great books. Use them all. I still use them quite a bit. They're really good. 2 other books that are classics, and I've had several people comment, say, well, why haven't you talked about these books? Well, okay, I will here. I don't use them that much anymore because, well, I should probably, but they're just pieces of art. They're just beautiful. And they are Dynamic Judo. It's 2-volume series on Dynamic Judo on throwing, the red one, and green one is the grappling. And they are state-of-the-art about how to do judo. These were written in 1967 by Kazuzo Kudo, the 9th Dan of the Kodokan, and they are just excellent. The photography, I'll grab this one here, and the photography here is in the layout of the book. You know, I mean, I've authored books, and I've worked with a lot of publishers and editors on how to lay out. The layout of the book is just beautiful. I mean, it's a piece of art, but it's also functional art, because the photography, I don't want to hurt the book here, the photography, as you can see, really goes from how to start the movement and how to finish the movement, okay? And really, really good photography. For the time it was written, this is you know, nothing was like it at the time, actually, and it still has stood the test of time quite well. Okay, everything you see here, it's amazing. I read these books like this, and you know, like Vital Judo as well, and some of the other books of the early days, Canon of Judo, and I read these books, and then I'll go on YouTube and see somebody come up with some brand new technique, give it some different name, and you go back and say, wait a minute, Kudo did that in Dynamic Judo. What page was that on? And absolutely it's there, you know, so it just goes to prove the more things change, the more they stay the same. There might be some improvements always. I'm not saying that things don't improve, but I'll tell you, when you get to these two books, they are dynamite. And if you can find them out there, they are collector's items, and they are worth a fair amount of money. I know that for a fact, that I kind of look back and like to check the price of these books sometimes, and they're a fair amount of money. So anyway, that's Dynamic Judo. If you can get one or both are better. They have and I have these as well, they have a series of books, Judo in Action, which Judo in Action for grappling, and it is basically a smaller version of this, a more affordable version of this book. And they have Judo in Action for throwing. So it's a smaller version of Dynamic Judo. So if you can get those books, they're considerably condensed over these large volumes, but they're still very good books, and they're also written by Kudo. They were just really smaller, condensed versions, which are, smaller size, something like this, that size of book for that. But basically, it's a kind of I don't want to say watered down Dynamic Judo, but it's a very much smaller version of Dynamic Judo. So anyway, that's a few more books in my collection. I will be doing a video on self-defense books. I still want to kind of make my notes on that and have some very specific things to say on the self-defense books that I like. And but we'll get to that in another video. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and watch all our videos on the books. And again, if you haven't started a collection of books, and I always say this, video is wonderful, this medium you're watching here, but books engage you, and even with a flashlight, no electricity, I can sit there and read my book. And in fact, I did. We had this past winter here in Kansas City, we had a period of over 24 hours. We'd had no electricity. And guess what? Just keep busy. I got out books, and I got out my flashlight, and I read. I couldn't watch the internet. I couldn't watch television. I couldn't, any of that stuff. But you know what? Books were there. They're great friends. So if you're not reading now, you should be. So thanks so much for watching.